How you doing, guys? What we're doing, and welcome to a brand new tutorial from I. But anyways, so today we got a special tutorial about making a Markdown editor using React. So if you're a beginner, either intermediate in React, and you want to learn like more things, projects and stuff, this is actually a really exciting project to add it to your list if you really want to just add to your list for like learning React and getting started with React, or you're just like intermediate and you want to just something, a project to practice on for React, to master the React and everything else. So we're gonna just dive into and work on creating a Markdown editor script in here. So this is actually gonna be the end result or the final Markdown editor we're gonna be creating. The style and the CSS in here doesn't look really that good, as you can clearly see in here, but the functionality is pretty nice, so it works. So here, if we just type in here some Markdown text, like we say hello, as clearly see in here, we obviously gonna have like like a header in here. So this is what gonna be transpiled into an HTML right of the right hand corner in here, and from the left we type in our Markdown. So if we say like hello from the other, and if we just do like 2 or 4 stars, which means we're gonna just put the text in bold. So like we did side, as clear as in here, it becomes bold, and so on and so forth. You can do a plenty of things. You can add import an image in here. You can pretty much add a links, or pretty much whatever you can do in Markdown you can add in here, and of course it's going to be converted to you from the right hand side into like plain HTML. So you can parse the DOM in here. You can do like inspect elements, or like you can't view the page source, but you can do specs elements, and you can view the full hierarchy. As clear as in it's H1, it's first header. If you add another one here like double, which is the second hello header, to hey, and as clear as in here we say the second header, and it has hi and everything else. So it's clear as in here, it's pretty easy, pretty awesome, straight to the point for the Markdown editor. And this is going to be creating from scratch. We're going to just working on a Codesandbox, because it is actually a sandbox ready-made for us, and we don't really need to do any setup or something. So it's going to be much easier for you actually guys to follow up, or either for me to do not set up every single time in new React projects and use create React app and so on and so forth. So let's just go ahead and start, dive into it, and let's make this really awesome Markdown editor. So we got in here like a bare minimum React template sandbox. We're just gonna go like Codesandbox, and you choose the React template, and this is what you get when starting this template. You get hello Codesandbox, starting editing some magic and stuff, and you got the panel in here to add some dependencies if you want to from npm or yarn, and of course you got your projects files from the left hand side over there. So what we can do, as clear as in here, I've added 2 or more dependencies here we're going to be working on for that project. So we got React, of course we got React. You can choose whatever version, but more specifically choose the version with which has support actually for hooks, because we're going to be using hooks in this tutorial pretty much a lot, using contexts a lot. So yeah, you're gonna have a pretty good good learning experience. You got React DOM, we got the React Markdown, which is super important for like transpiling Markdown code into an HTML code, and of course render it using React. We got React scripts, which is also pre-included with the package, and we got the style components, and we're going to be using style components for putting our CSS code, using like styling the application and stuff. So we're going to be using CSS using style components. So actually those are the dependencies you're going to be needing for that, and yeah, that's basically what we need for first. So first things first, let's go into the src, and we need to create a new directory. I'm going to name it components. So the components directory is going to hold all the needed components, and basically we're going to have 2 main components. We're going to have where we type in the Markdown, and for the second part, so we're going to have where we see the Markdown preview or the converted Markdown. So from the right hand side, as you have seen before on the demo, as I've showed you before pretty much. So what we can do in here is have 2 separate components. Let me just go create a file. I'm gonna name first one is like the marked input.gsx, and the reason that you include x because I want to just like use a React file in here. So we're gonna have result.gsx, and this is actually gonna be for the result. And for the app.js, we got like a simple app.js in here, but what we're gonna do is actually have a container that takes the full width of the whole container here. So we're gonna have like the main React application takes the full width. So first we need to make sure that the HTML body, and if you take a look on here public, you go to index.html, by default it has actually a div with an ID root. So this ID root, what it does, it basically all of your code, all of your React nodes and children's, everything, all of your components is going to be rendered inside of that div root. So you make sure that root takes the full width and the full height. So yeah, you have the full result over there. What we can do first, so we can go to styles.scss. As you can see, we got the .app. I'm gonna just include HTML body, and I'm gonna have like the ID of root, and make sure to take like the full width for that and full height as well. So we need to make sure that they both take the full width and the full height for this to work properly as we need before. Now here we're going to use in style components. I'm going to just do import style from style components. So we need to do some styling for our application. And first things first, so I'm going to remove this div class. I'm going to replace it with a style component. And I'm going to name my style components actually const up the container of the application, and I'm just gonna have like a div. Okay, so inside of that div, what I'm gonna be adding is actually width of 100%. So this is actually the main up container div, which is gonna take the full height and the full width. So we could probably render everything inside of that and have the whole two parts where we put the markdown and where we see the converted markdown into HTML. I'm gonna have a display to flex, so always use flex boxes in here. I'm gonna have a flex direction of column because we're gonna just like put a title and stuff, and we're gonna have a line items. Okay, it's super hard to put all of that, so I'm just gonna be copy pasting all of the style components because I'm not gonna cover the whole style component, not just for making the video too long for that. So yeah, that's actually the beneficial side for that particular case. So we got in, this is actually the up container. What I'm going to be putting here is actually the up container, and I'm going to be closing this with the up container, of course. So the up container can pretty much take the full width and the full height, and there you go. So it's actually the same thing, nothing actually happened or something. So we got the same things. There you go. We got the up container from there. We got the H1 and H2. Now this is going to create another component. We're going to name it title. And this one, what is actually just going to represent our markdown title. It's not really a big deal. So I'm just going to paste that title in here. And I'm just going to put, there you go. Okay, sorry for that. I'm not used to use Codesandbox a lot, so I'm just used to use VS Code so much a lot. So here, what we can do pretty much is we can, I don't know, like type in Markdown Editor or something. Okay, there you go. It should actually show up there. And if you take a look in here, we got the font family, change it to Lado. Sorry for that, Lado, and we've got sans serif. And yeah, so it's actually the fallback like font family, and we got Lado from the overhand side. We're gonna have another container, which is gonna be the container for both of the editors, like you've seen before. A split editor from the left hand side, we're gonna have the input of the markdown, and the right hand side, we're gonna have the preview of the markdown. So simply for doing that, we're just gonna create a container. You're gonna have a flex display, and of course, flex direction of row, just to show up that, and of course, it takes the full width and the full height for both of these. So I'm gonna get rid of that, and I don't really need it anymore. And I'm gonna have editor container, and so editor container from that. So all of the editors are going to be put it right down there. So pretty much that's it. That's actually the layout we need. The title over there, up there, and we got both of the editor container going to hold both of the marked inputs and the actual result components we created up here in the components folder. Now let's just jump steps and go into the marked input and create our first like components in here, which is going to be able to allow us to actually enter the markdown text, and of course we see the result on the left hand side, or pretty much the right hand side preview container over there. So for doing that, I'm gonna create a normal component, of course. We're just gonna start by doing import React as always. So I'm gonna import React from React, and I'm gonna do import site components from site component. So there you go, simple. Now we're gonna be first making actually a container. So I'm gonna use site components to make a container, and the container is actually gonna take half of the width of the actual page. As you can see, the page, as you've seen before, we took the 100% of the page width. Now we're gonna take only half of it, which is 50%, and the other half we're gonna display the actual preview of the converted markdown into HTML. So I'm just gonna put in here width to 50% only. And I'm gonna also be putting the height to 50 or pretty much 100%, because the height, we want to just have the full height taken from that. We're gonna have a padding, let's say we're gonna have like a 13 pixels or 14 pixels of padding, border right. So just display the border I've seen before, just like splitting between, like, among both of these editors. So I'm gonna have the border right, and I'm just gonna say let's have like a 1.5 pixels border right with a solid, and the actual color of that's gonna be just RGBA, and I'm gonna include 15, okay, 15, and I'm just gonna have like 0.4. So yeah, it has some opacity from there. And for the font family, for sure we're gonna have like the Lotto font family, and I'm gonna have sans serif. There you go. So you can do, like, you can go here for Codesandbox and go external resources, Google fonts, and you can choose whatever fonts you want to include in your projects, whatever application you're working on. You can choose any fonts from the list, and of course you can add fonts, and your application can easily use that. Or you can go to the Google Fonts repository, grab some font from there, and of course add them throughout CSS. Simple enough. Now, of course, we got Lotto here preloaded for us. Of course, we're going to be also adding the title. I'm just going to copy the title that we've added before, because the title components we've added before, more likely if you want to just have the application like, you know, the code much more readable, and of course is much better, is actually you can create like a common file where you put the title inside of it, and of course you can import the title for both the marked import and the app.js, because that's, we actually retyping the same code, and that's actually not really the best thing to do, not the best practice to do, actually do when coding and putting such applications. So I'm just going to put a title in there, doesn't really matter that much. And now the most important part is actually the text area. Remember, we need to input text, and of course not only like an inline input, it's actually multi-line input, which means you're going to be using an HTML text area, and most likely you're going to be putting that. Of course I'm going to be styling it, of course, to fit the whole container, so changing the width and height, changing the background, removing the outline, and so on and so forth. So I'm going to name this my text area, and this is actually going to be equal to style dot text area, there you go, without actually capital letters, not camel casing. Of course, this is actually HTML, and I'm gonna have like a width of 100%, because this is actually gonna be a child of the container, and the container takes only 50% of the full width of the page, which means it's gonna take 100%, which means it's gonna just only take 50% of the page, because it is child. It only takes 100% of the parent's width, and that's how you actually explain how CSS works. And for the height, we're always just going to assign 100% for the height for all of the different stuff. It doesn't really matter for that height thing. And yeah, so we're going to have like resize to none, and we're going to have like a border to, let's say, none again. We're going to remove the border, and we're going to of course remove outline, the blue outline, and of course we're not going to be able to allow any resizing throughout this text area. And the font size inside of the text area, let's say it's gonna have like 17 pixels. Yeah, fair enough. Now the most important part is actually our component. I'm gonna export a function, so I'm gonna name this like marked input, as I've said before, as we've named our file. We're gonna have props, and for that, what we're gonna do is we're gonna just simply return a container. So we're just gonna do return a container. There you go. I'm gonna return a title inside of the container. So the title, how it looks like, is actually pretty simple. Markdown text. There you go. And the most important part is actually the text area. So we're gonna put all our text inside of it. And yeah, there we go, text area. And we've got a text area. We actually don't need that anyway. I don't know. There you go. We don't need actually just to open and close text area because we don't have text to preload from the server or something, because we just have an empty text area at first. Then the user can fill this text area with whatever he wants, like the markdown text. And as simple as that, this is actually the markdown input, and we can just go ahead and put it inside of the app.js. So here we can just do markdown. There you go. We don't have any props needed, and there you go. We got that. It's clear in here. We can type, like we can say hello, word or something, and you can do pretty much anything. It's actually multi-line, and the text area takes the full width and the full height of the 50%. And of course, if you resize that, it's clear to see it takes of whatever available width and just divides into 50%. So that's actually how it works, how we do stuff with flex boxes and stuff. Yeah, it works pretty well, and yeah, that's pretty good. Now let's jump into the styles or the result.jsx, and most important we're gonna do is actually import so React from React. There you go. I'm gonna import styles from stack components again. It's actually usual stuff we need to do. And for the results, we're simply just gonna, like, you know, copy paste the container we did add it for the marked input, because it has the same container. It takes the 50% of the width, full height, padding and stuff, so nothing really is going to be changed. Of course, we're also going to be needing the same title, so actually just copy pasting. As I said before, you can create like a common file for storing all of these like retyped components or reused components, just to reuse them and import them and use them without retyping the code. But just for the sake of the tutorial, I don't want to make just too long, so we're just going to make this super easy. Now, the most important part is actually the result area. And for the result area, it's going to be pretty simple. You're going to have like a normal result area container, which is actually going to be just a normal div. So let's create a div in here and make sure the width is actually 100%. Height again is 100%. And well, let's see, for the result area we have no, let's say border is actually gonna be none, and for the font size, okay, gonna have 17 pixels, just to make sure that the font size is actually standard between both of the input and the output areas. Yeah, we have no issues for that. Now let's export our components. Let's do like export a stateless functional component. I'm gonna do results, props, and I don't know, let's just return the actual container. There you go. Okay, there you go. So we got the container. Let's try to add the same title in here. I don't know, let's just put a title of converted text, and let's just put like the result area. And for the results area, I don't know, well, for the results area here, what we're going to be using is actually the markdown component. So the markdown component actually takes and converts that into, like, you give it a markdown, it converts into an HTML, and of course renders it to you on the actual area. It takes the full width and the full height of the parent, which is in this case the result area. So if you type in here like the React markdown, and of course first I'm going to import it in the top. So React markdown library from React markdown. There you go. Now we've got the React markdown. What it takes actually takes the source, which is the actual input. If you type in here, like, just for testing purposes, we got hello or something, and yeah, it should pretty much, if you go to the app.js and got the actual result area, so we're gonna have just only the result. If I save that, as clear as in here, we got hello converted into like a header h1. So clear as in here, it works. So the markdown and everything, the markdown conversion works. Now, what we're gonna need to do right now is actually the style, the layout, both of the components actually are ready. Everything is actually put into the working process in here. Now, the only most important part is actually left, which is making the markdown working. Of course, whenever we change or whenever we submit something in here, we need to immediately take the change and of course set the state in order to convert a text updates with the converted markdown. And of course, this is actually pretty simple to do. We only need to do like export some functions and of course set the state and update it frequently. So it's not really a kind of a big deal or something. So we're just going to try now. I'm going to be using, so let's close that or collapse them. And what I'm going to be using actually a React context. So for React context, what it does is actually you provide a component like throughout the component hierarchy, and you provide the components into the parent component like a provider, and that provider is actually going to provide the value of that provider to all of its children. So all of the children are going to access this value throughout the props without the need to actually implement or like pass specifically or explicitly pass the actual props into the component itself. So that's basically how context works. You can learn more about React context, how they works, but I'm going to be creating a context like right in the src. I'm going to name this my editor context.js. So here for the editor context, what you're going to have is actually going to have import React. So I'm just going to do React for that. What I'm going to do const default context. So I'm going to have the default context right up there. I'm going to, of course, we need to supply like a default context. I'm going to have markdown text is actually empty at first, and set markdown text is just like a normal function. It doesn't have or do anything, just like an empty function. So yeah, and here we're gonna export defaults React dot create context. So we have gonna use or create the context in order to be able to use it, and of course we're gonna provide the default context. So we just export the created context and we pass the default context, so it has like a default values. Now to use the context, we need to go into the app.js. And right in the app.js, what you need to do is actually grab the context, supply some values, and use the context. So the context in here is clearly seeing what it takes. It takes two main parts. So the first one is actually the markdown text, which is the current text that needs to be transpiled. And we're going to be passing this markdown text to the result component, and the result component going to have this throughout the source and like converts that into a normal HTML and renders all the outputs. So just like a variable holding the current markdown text inputted throughout the markdown input component up there. So that's basically what it does for that. The other point is actually set markdown text. Whenever we want to update the markdown text, whenever the input changes for that, is actually we're going to have like to update it throughout this function. So that's basically what the context is actually providing. So for that, we need to provide the actual state. I'm going to use hooks for that case. So I'm going to have like a const like markdown. Okay, that's not how you pronounce that. So markdown text and set markdown text. I'm going to be using a use state from React, so I'm going to importing that. And the first what it takes actually takes an empty string, so we don't have any issues for that. I'm going to create in here context value, and there you go. So we got the context value and everything. The most important part for that is actually so markdown text and set markdown text. We need to provide both of these, like markdown text and set markdown text. So it's actually going to represent the value, the context value. Now for using the value to provide that, we need to use the provider, passing in the context value, and all of the children of the provider are going to have access to that values, and of course going to have access to this method to change the state, and of course going to have access to the state itself or the state variable in order to access the current markdown input. So for that, I'm going to provide that into the actual main or root level components for that. So I'm going to be first doing is actually importing the editor. So I'm going to do editor context So dot provider. So I'm going to be providing that, and of course let me just name this like a capital case, because React doesn't actually work well with the camel case or lowercase letters at first. So there's actually the provider. We need to first provide the value, which is the context value, and here we can do editor provider. There you go. Now all of these components, all of these inside of like up container, the marked inputs components, result components, all of them gonna have access to the markdown text and the set markdown text without explicitly passing them throughout the props. And we can use the use context hook in order to access one of these. So let's go into inside of the results, or pretty much first let's go into the markdown input in order to update the input of the actual state we got in there whenever the inputs of the markdown inputs component changes. So for that, I'm gonna pretty much doing in here is actually creating a callback method. So I'm gonna do const and create on input change, and we got the e, which is the events for that input change, and simply what I'm gonna be providing is like const new value. So have like e dot current target dot value. So grab the current target value, the updated value, and of course you're going to be using set markdown, and I need to use the context first. So now to use the context to grab the actual values from the context on the components or the child of the provider that we've provided in here. Remember, the marked input is actually a child of provider. If we got any other like components outside of this provider, they won't be able to access the context values whatsoever. So you have to make sure they are actually inside the provider hierarchy, and in order to be able to access that. So for that, I'm gonna just jump in here. I'm gonna use hooks as well, and if hooks actually grabs a lot of beneficial sides for that and make your life easier. So set markdown text, and I'm gonna be using, so I'm gonna use the use context hook provided by React library itself, and I'm gonna be passing it the actual context. I'm gonna just have like editor context, and we got the set markdown. Now the set markdown is actually gonna set in the markdown, passing it new value, and everything is actually done. Now we need to assign this callback into the text area on change events. So whenever it changes, we got the on input change gonna be running out. So we're gonna get the current event, grab the value from the current event, and eventually just like set up and refresh the states with a new value and update the states. Pretty much that simple. So simple enough. Let's just jump into the actual result. Now we need to grab the data and render it. As simple as that. Not really a big deal. So I'm gonna just do in here markdown text, and of course again we're gonna be using the use context hook. The use context hook, I'm gonna use editor context, and we got the markdown. Now instead of passing this static text in here, I'm just gonna do like markdown text, and there you go. Now it should actually change. All of the components should pretty much work fine. Now if you try to like input in here hello space you need, there's actually a normal plain text. It changes from the right hand side, but if you type in like a real markdown text like hello, of course it actually transpiles this markdown text into an HTML, and it actually gets the preview right over here. So it actually converts everything, it puts it in the result components, and it renders that throughout the actual markdown components as we've used right over here, which is the React Markdown library. So it's pretty simple, pretty easy. You can type in like whatever, you can use links, you can use pretty much a lot of things. You can use images if you would like to look for markdown images or something. Like there's bold text, there is, I don't know, like let's say why don't you use actually lines, how separators actually work for markdown, and a lot of things. You can actually look on GitHub's markdown cheat sheet for learning more about how to use markdowns and stuff. But that's pretty much it actually, guys. So thank you guys for watching. I really hope you guys have enjoyed the working on this markdown text converter. I really enjoyed making the video tutorials, working all of that, and of course making these videos, all of them, to you guys. So make sure to subscribe to that or push the like button, and make sure to subscribe because a lot of people are watching my videos and they are not subscribed whatsoever. So they actually like 90% of the videos watching or people watching my videos are not subscribed. So please guys, go down below the video, push that subscribe button in order to get all the notifications, get the new videos and stuff. So thank you guys for watching. As I said before, hopefully you like this video tutorials. If you would like more of these topics like that on React and creating cool stuff like this, like a Markdown editor or something like that, let me know in the comments below. I'll be very, very happy to do more video tutorials for you guys. So thank you guys for watching. As I said before, hope you guys have enjoyed, and make sure to test that out and have a point and let me know in the comments. So see you guys hopefully in the next video tutorials. Adios.